So,
Yep.
yep. All right, cool. So talking about photography in the group, one, I got a few announcements to make. I made a new theme, and I just decided to make it a monthly theme. Since it's December, there's lots of holidays that happen throughout this month. We've got obviously Christmas, we've got Hanukkah, we've got Kwanzaa. You know, there's the winter solstice if you're Wiccan. There's a whole number of holidays. So I just decided to make the theme for the group this entire month is just holidays. So anything and everything that is related to a holiday theme for the month of December, that's the theme for the group this month. Keep it easy. I'm going to be busy. The other thing I did do is I actually created an album in the group, and y'all can see my screen, right? I've got it shared.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, cool. I created an album in the group called Live CC and Discussion, or Constructive Criticism and Discussion. I figure it's an easy way for people to throw their images that they want us to discuss in these live group chats in there. And that way there's a little disclaimer that also says, adding your images to this album, you agree to allow your images to be displayed and discussed on Coffee and Cameras and the Bourbon Hour, which are streamed live online and are also recorded and saved to YouTube. And I kind of did that to cover my butt a little bit for whatever possible legal issue could happen. What's up?
Capitalize on the royalties of that one penny.
I know, exactly. So, but yeah, I mean, and it also, that way if you drop an image in this album, we know for sure that you're cool with us, you know, talking about it. Not only it being displayed publicly, but us actually, you know, talking about it, you know, providing criticism, etc. So I figured it was also, you know, a good way to go about that. So anybody and everybody watching this, if you're in the group and you want one of your images talked about, and drop it in that album for us. Cool. That's pretty much it for group news. We're going to actually come back to that folder here in a little bit and start talking about those shots that people have already started uploading in there. Cool. Anybody got any photography news they want to talk about that they've seen pop up in the last couple weeks, because we've been offline for a few weeks since I was out of town working.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun. How about that new what is that? The Canon RS?
Oh yeah, that 75 megapixel
75
that they're
megapixel.
yeah. Actually let's do this.
Is it a DSLR or a mirrorless?
It's a DSLR. It's not the one that they're rumoring to have the hybrid mount that's supposed to accept both their DSLR and mirrorless mount lenses. I'm trying to find the article on it. Here we go.
It's mirrorless.
Oh yeah, it is mirrorless, but it's not the camera they're rumoring to have that hybrid mount. So, but it says specs revealed by the camera rumor source claim the camera will feature a 75 megapixel sensor that is focused on dynamic range, dual card slots, a joystick instead of that damn bar, the Digic 9 processor, max burst similar to the EOS R. What's the burst on the EOS R? Isn't it like 16 or 18 or something like that?
The burst on the EOS R?
Yeah.
It boasts something with double digits, but you do sacrifice. I believe that it can do double digit speed, but you do not have tracking focus.
Gotcha.
So it really hobbles itself when you're talking about frame rate. If you want tracking and continuous, it moves to, I think, something around 3 to 5 frames a second with mechanical in order to use tracking.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But what's it gonna do at 70 megapixels? You know, how's it gonna buffer that? It's got to be single digits at that point.
Not necessarily. I mean, it really just depends on how much internal RAM or memory that it's got built into it for that buffer. And then it's just a matter of transfer rate and what kind of store or memory cards it will use. Because, you know, with the new faster storage, there's faster transfer rates, so that buffer can be emptied quicker. So as long as the actual internal memory is large enough to actually store all of those images, and the buffer, the transfer, the bus is fast enough to the memory media, then they can still get a significant amount of shots. So I mean, technology wise, the technology is there. It's just going to be a question of what they actually put into it as to how big that buffer will be and how fast the transfer rate is to the media.
You finally get two card slots with this.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to pay enough for, say, even the HC2 tough cards that are 300 megabyte write a second speeds, then it's just a matter of math there. It's not a great amount of shots a second that you're actually going to be right in there versus the frame rate. But yeah, depending on what the internal memory and that buffer size is actually going to be, the R line or the RS lines, the S lines period, have never been for large burst shooting. They've always been for high megapixel studio work.
Right, exactly. That's why they target like the sports shooters that are shooting those bursts with like the 1D line, So I'm sure that the new 1D that they announced has a very large buffer, and obviously it doesn't have the super high megapixel. What was the announcement on that 1D, the new 1D that they announced?
I forget what the specs are on that, but it was pretty lackluster.
Yeah, no, I meant resolution. I think it was like a 24 or something like that. But it actually had a pretty decent, I think they were saying up to 20 frames per second. And then it had some limitations based on what type of shooting you were doing, but yeah.
Well, the Sony can't do more than 20 at 24 megapixels. So
right.
I don't think, here, for everybody. Hey, Sony. The A4 only does, the A7R4 only does like 10.
Yeah.
Because it's 61 megapixels. I don't think that they could put a big enough memory in it just yet. But
I think they can. I think they won't is the thing, because I think that a lot of these companies actually limit. They're not putting what they're capable of in. They're putting in somewhere in the middle so that they have room to, upgrade for the next version.
Yeah, absolutely. They must have more stuff on the shelf than people even realize.
Not for nothing, but if you're shooting 60 megapixel images, you're most likely not shooting sports.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
So
that's what this camera right here on the screen is for.
I use the A9 for sports and birds in flight.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the A9 and the A7 III, they work just fine with that, and they're in the 24 megapixel range.
Yeah.
So you get your great buffer at 30 plus. If you don't have fast enough cards to write to keep that up.
Right, exactly. And I mean, for sports, it's definitely, that's the thing. For birding, John knows, it's nice having really high megapixel because a lot of those bird guys like to be able to crop quite a bit because it's really hard to compose a shot on the fly while, the birds are zigzagging and moving real fast. So,
yeah.
So they tend to like the higher megapixels so they have room to crop.
I was actually at a Sony event yesterday. I stopped in. I was talking to one of the bird guys there.
Was that Unique?
Yeah, Unique. He's shooting the A7R4 cropped down. He's getting 24 megapixels with a 10-shot burst, and he's using the 2 to 600. He said, I'm at 900 and I don't lose a stop.
Right.
Versus using an extender.
Gotcha. All right, there's my beautiful face, guys.
There we go. There we go. My day is so much brighter now.
I know. I just made everybody's day. Actually, I forgot that it wasn't running, and I looked up there and saw that ugly logo still there, so. Oh, so yeah, I was just scrolling through. I saw this morning. I haven't even read the article or specs on it. So it looks like Nikon is going to announce their new D6 in February. So in-body stabilization, dual CF express cards, 4K 60p video, and more. I'm not even going to bother opening it up and reading it because it's still just rumor. So it hasn't been officially announced.
2020 becomes the end of the DSLRs. I don't
Yeah.
think it will, but
I don't think so either. I mean, I think that DSLRs have their purpose, and I think that mirrorless has their purpose, and I think that it's going to be another 5 to 10 years before, if at all, DSLRs are completely phased out. You know, and the problem is you're going to have tons of people that still have their DSLRs, so those companies are still going to have to support them, and will probably still continue to make glass for them because honestly, the camera companies aren't making their money off of the bodies. They're making their money off of the glass that they make for their bodies. You know? So if the largest part of the market is still shooting DSLR, they're going to continue to make glass for DSLR. If, you know, somehow everybody's DSLR broke or everybody just decided, you know what, DSLRs are crap, I'm buying mirrorless, then they're going to focus a lot more of their resources on, you know, mirrorless glass. So
I'd be curious to see the data on that though. The sales of mirrors or sales of bodies versus glass. It's not for nothing. Glass retains its quality.
yeah, but then you also have to throw in the marketing factor and everybody wanting the latest and greatest and newest, you know. How many people, you know, have perfectly acceptable older glass and then a new lens gets announced and it's all the rage and all of the influencers and everybody rant and rave about how sharp it is and blah blah blah, and those people that have perfectly good glass go and buy it anyways.
Didn't you just buy a new lens?
I did. Actually, it's in the other room. The Tamron 70-200 SP VC USD blah 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 G2
It's
Gen
trying to
2.
become military anymore. If there's more than 3 consonants, it's an acronym.
Yeah, exactly. But their acronym doesn't spell anything that can be pronounceable. So.
Now that we're on the subject, let me ask you guys a question. What advantages does a DSLR have over a mirrorless? And why would DSLRs stay around? Only if they get cheaper, in my eyes.
A lot of people still like the optical view over the EVF as the first one. That's the very first one that comes to mind for me.
The majority of the market are not professional and they're going to stick with what they know.
Yeah.
You know, that's why mirrorless is taking so. Last I saw, mirrorless only made up like 1% of cameras sold because it's only the pros or, you know, very high-end hobbyists that even buy.
Actually, mirrorless has taken over a more than 1% now, and it's going to go up significantly in the next year or two because if you look at the market share, Sony recently bumped Nikon, and I actually just saw something even more recent where apparently Sony bumped Canon also, and Sony is now the #1 market share. And Sony only produces mirrorless. They do not produce any DSLR.
Yep.
Well, what's the overall market? What they, you know, what's the overall sales on cameras?
Well, yeah, overall sales in general are going down, and that has a lot to do with, you know, obviously smartphones. And here's the other thing. Whenever you look at the numbers, whenever you look at the camera sales numbers, they're grouping it all together. It's not just professional level stuff. It's a lot of the consumer stuff, including all of the little point and shoots. And all of the little point and shoots and all of those little, you know, $100 to $500 cameras that you see on every electronic shelf, those are the majority of the market. It's not the DSLRs or the higher end mirrorless cameras. Those are a very small percentage of that overall quote unquote camera market that these numbers are based off of. You
Yeah, but
know,
that's the sector
that
that's
they're
getting
they're
hit the
selling
most.
1,000 point and shoots to every 10 DSLRs or whatever. You know, so
But the
and
point and
those
shoots
point and
aren't the
shoots
ones
and
that
all
are
of
getting
those
hit.
cameras are going the way of the dodo because everybody now has a camera built into their smartphone that actually will outshoot those little point and shoots for the most part. You know.
Well, um, damn, it just left my head. Holy mackerel.
Drink more coffee.
Don't get old, man.
Yeah, I hear ya.
No, I think DSLRs still do hold a good place for everybody, especially because they're becoming much more affordable
Right.
as they're essentially moving on the way out.
Mm-hmm.
The overall professional market hasn't completely switched over yet because if it ain't broke, why fix it?
Exactly.
But by and large, everybody who's trying to edge the market, especially when we're talking about regards to image quality and workflow, if you can buy a camera that is marginal to a DSLR, if not better, and it can quicken the capabilities that you have to getting the shot you need versus anything that a DSLR can do, well, why not start with that?
Right.
Plus, the influx of photographers into the industry all the time are becoming younger and younger, and they're definitely on the side of innovation versus here's a DSLR. Very much of what we saw 20 years ago of why do I need this 2 megapixel digital camera? I'm going to stick with film because that's always going to last. Here
Mm-hmm.
we are 20 years later, every DSLR on the market is digital.
Right.
So I think we're moving in the way where mirrorless is not going to be so niche anymore. It's going to be a staple and a mainstay, and it's really going to be about which camera is best for you and your business. And we're going to have niche photographers picking up DSLRs, or DSLRs are going to be more on the Rebel or the four-figure D line for Nikon of just getting up and started. Because I mean, why not?
Yeah, the thing is that I agree and I disagree because you see that everybody that's now jumping into the mirrorless pool are also doing entry level mirrorless, you know, with their ASPC, like, you know, Nikon did the Z50 and Canon did the R whatever it was, and Sony has the A6500 or whatever it is. So one, it's actually cheaper for them to produce those, so they can actually market them cheaper because they don't have, you know, the shutter mechanism and a few other things, and they can make it a smaller body. So it actually is less expensive for them to produce them. And why would somebody jump on a entry level DSLR versus an entry level mirrorless, especially being the young people that are about all the new technology? That would be my argument. You know, here's what I think that they should
totally
do.
Makes sense, and why I feel that DSLRs are going to slide out. Kind of what you were saying before is you're kind of projecting 5 to 10 years.
Right.
I'm kind of thinking 3 to 5.
Right.
Before when we're actually facing that. Do I think DSLRs being downslated as a price point, being pushed out, is going to cause more sales for DSLRs?
Yep.
No, but it creates a competitive opportunity for low-end camera and
Right.
low-end photography sales. But just to your point as well, with the APS cameras that are coming out and the lower production cost to the companies, giving us lower price cost on the consumer side, I think that's where a lot of people are going to start going.
Yeah. This is what I think they should do. I think that they should really try to compete with the smartphones on the lower consumer side. I think they should take basically a Android smartphone, put a ASPC size mirrorless sensor and interchangeable lens mount on it, and basically make a mirrorless DSLR that is based on a smartphone. So they can have a SIM card in it. They can take pictures and immediately upload directly to Facebook or Instagram or whatever else from the camera itself. They don't have to transfer it to their computer or their phone and then upload to all of these online platforms. If that was all built into the camera itself and then it had the luxury of a larger sensor and interchangeable lenses, I think that's something they could really market to that whole demographic of people that are like, well, I've already got a camera on my phone, you know. So.
Well,
Yeah, I think that would be very interesting to see.
And think about this:
I
our
think that
phones
would
have a lot more
than,
processing power
than
than the camera bodies do. So there's a lot. They could start adding all kinds of apps where you can sit there and start adding filters to all of your images as you're shooting them, and you know.
Oh, don't we already have models that do that for us?
For some, yeah, to some extent, but you know.
I was actually in the Verizon store the other day because unfortunately the battery on my existing phone is crapping out.
Yep.
But Hasselblad makes an attachment for an Android with a Hasselblad lens on it.
Yeah, actually, that's a great point, and that's not new. There are a lot of companies that make these little clip-on lenses that clip over your smartphone and basically give you different focal lengths and whatever on basically your smartphone camera, and they seem to be doing quite well. So that just kind of, you know, solidifies that could be a definite market, is creating more of a hybrid, you know, smartphone camera, whatever, you know. And if you could slip a little SIM card into it and add it to your existing cellular plan so you can connect right up to Facebook and everything else from wherever you are shooting, I think that would actually be a pretty awesome, you know, step in the right direction for that, you know.
I kind of think so too, but I also think that would end up cannibalizing their lower end models.
Yeah, but that would be a balancing act they would have to play with and decide, hey, you know what? Do we want to keep an actual DSLR / mirrorless SLR format? Or do we want to, you know, make the, and I'm not saying make literally a smartphone. I'm just saying, you know what? Take your current mirrorless body and slide a smartphone into it. You know, so it still has that camera form, or, you know, but it has a full, you know, touchscreen on the back that you can install apps and, you know, like Facebook and Instagram and photo editors and whatever else.
Kind of already doing that a little bit, not so much the major camera companies, DJI. So we grabbed this over the summer. Have you gotten to play with the Pocket?
No, I've watched a couple of the little videos on it, but I haven't played with it.
Fun little 3-axis gimbal, fits literally into your pocket, can do 4K, does exactly what you're saying as well, because you want full screen? There you go.
There you go, yeah.
Right onto the back, right onto your phone.
And it's connected to your phone via Bluetooth, and it uses the DJI app.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's an attachment to that on this as well.
Right, yeah. I've got the DJI Osmo Mobile, so I'm familiar with that. And then they came out with the little Go after that, and I was like, yeah, you know, it's a probably a little bit better camera, you know, lens and sensor than what was in the phone I was using when I first got the mobile. But, you know, I didn't see any reason to go and buy the Go because I already had the Osmo Mobile, which was sufficient for what I was wanting to use it for.
Yeah, I've got that Zhiyun little mobile thing, cost me $50 off of eBay.
Yeah,
I was selling it for $100.
They make great little gimbals too.
Not for nothing, it's a pain in the ass to throw my phone into that.
Yeah.
So just having this pocket here and being able to pull that out and just go.
Yeah.
It, again, seconds to minutes to hours, it just saves so much more
Oh
time.
yeah, I actually my Osmo Mobile is sitting in a box on the shelf somewhere. I haven't touched it in probably close to a year. I ended up getting the Zhiyun Crane Plus, which will handle, you know, full DSLR and heavy glass, and I use it whenever I want to shoot something because I'll throw, you know, an actual real camera on it. And Yep. Cool. Did you say you picked up a drone, by the way? Or was that somebody else?
Who, me?
Yeah.
I want to pick up the Mavic Mini.
Yeah, that's what it was.
So if I can make that work, that would be great as far as entry level, because I don't want to be another one of those statistics that, oh my God, drones are everything. So you go out and you spend $2,000 on a new Mavic Pro 2, and then all of a sudden a year later you've used it 3 times.
Right. Yep.
So that Mavic Mini is actually really nice in there because you don't have to register with the FAA.
Mm-hmm.
You don't necessarily need a license unless you plan to use commercial, and it's just as easy as anything else.
Yeah.
But the only thing it doesn't do is shoot 4K, and not for nothing. Unless I'm on a huge 32-inch IPS monitor with top end 144 and high resolution, what does 4K do for me?
And nothing. And here's the other thing: how many people are going to be viewing that video exactly like that? Probably not many.
Exactly.
The majority of them are going to be viewing it from their smartphone or their iPad or their laptop, you know,
Yep.
in 1080 or even 720, you know. So,
Yep. So the 4K I don't need. It shoots 2.7, which is perfect. That's perfectly fine. It's
Mhm.
above 1080, but even 1080 is all I need.
Yep.
About the only thing that I don't like about it is that it doesn't shoot RAW.
right, gotcha. Yep.
That is the only thing.
I mean,
What's that? 'Cause
how
that's
much
away.
are you talking about for stills or are you talking about for video?
Oh, I have the Mavic Pro. It does shoot RAW.
Right, right. The upper levels, and I think I'm not too sure, but I think the Mavic Air does shoot RAW DNG as well.
It does.
But Mavic Mini doesn't. It's one of those things that they hobbled so it doesn't cannibalize the other models.
Well, here's my other question is, are you really concerned about raw video, you know? I don't know how much video you've gotten into editing, but honestly, for the majority of the stuff that I work with, since I'm not going into advanced color grading and stuff like that on the video, I'm perfectly fine with, you know, AVI and MP4 and those formats coming straight out of the video capture device because I'm not doing a whole lot of adjustments to the footage anyways. I'm basically just clipping and, you know, that kind of stuff. Now, I would understand if I was getting into it on a cinematic level where I was wanting to have full control of color grading and all of that other stuff. Yeah, I would want raw. But for just, you know, basic to mid-level videography for, you know, documentation or, you know, some client video or whatever, I really don't feel like raw is a deal breaker. You know?
No. Well, actually, no. I think it does shoot raw video.
Mm.
I'm talking raw stills.
Oh, stills. Okay.
Right. So that's the only thing that I'm like, okay, that shoots me in the foot a little bit, but is it really going to be that important?
Yeah. I mean, it's how long did we all work on JPEGs before RAW actually became available to us as photographers to work with? You know.
Depending on the situation, I'll still shoot JPEG.
Yeah. So I mean, it's definitely not a deal breaker there either, especially for, you know, drone still photography. So.
I tell you what, I have my Mavic. I have the Hasselblad one.
Mm-hmm.
It takes incredible stills. I like it for stills. I don't shoot it. I shoot video with it, but I don't do anything.
They're pretty much all Hasselblad now because DJI bought out Hasselblad.
Yeah, but the other one with the zoom is not a Hasselblad lens, but it still takes gorgeous stills too.
Yeah.
Right.
And it lets you zoom in like from a 24 to a 50 or something ridiculous.
Nice.
So on the fly while it's in the air. But you know what? Now there's so many no-fly zones by me. The thing is almost useless.
Well, if you didn't live next to an airport.
Well, I know what my neighborhood looks like. I'm talking about like, well, at Duke's I could probably shoot outside. I got to be 2 miles away from my house.
Yeah.
And then my office is right. You saw it. It's right on an airport strip. So.
Yep.
Hey, John, where are you at?
I'm sorry.
Where are you at?
I'm at my studio, Silk
I mean,
Studio.
Where are you
New
located
Jersey.
in Jersey?
East Hanover.
North Jersey, Morristown.
Oh, okay. So when you mentioned Duke's, are you talking about Duke Farms?
No, he's talking about Duke
no,
Fam,
Okay.
Duke Farm, his studio.
South Jersey.
Oh, okay, okay.
Where are you located?
I'm over in Phillipsburg, but I used to work and manage a studio out in the Hillsborough Hunterdon area. So Duke Farms, when you're talking about like North Jersey, if you're talking about South Jersey and I hear Duke, yeah, Duke Farm. That's where he's at. I know he's out there. When you're talking about Duke up in this area, and it's like, okay, there's an entire family of Dukes that owns this huge estate and farmland.
Yeah, Duke. Yeah, that was
Thomas Duke.
the tobacco people. You can't get on there. You got to like plan a visit and stuff. It's gorgeous.
No, it's open to the public. They're not photographer friendly like Longwood Gardens would be, so you do have to proceed with caution.
Yeah. Well, I'm from Newark originally, so we just go do what we want to do and ask for forgiveness later.
In my experience, that usually comes with a fine, so I kind of stop
Yeah.
that. Let me make a phone call first.
Where's Phillipsburg?
We are the last town westbound on I-78 before you get into PA and Easton.
Oh, okay. I know where it is. My sister-in-law lives in Alpha.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's literally 1 mile from where I'm at.
Yeah. All right, we got to shoot sometime.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Okay. Right now, I'm waiting for Jenny to show up.
Yep.
Got to shoot today.
Oh, nice. So we have 4 equine sessions today.
All right.
Where? Over in Bernardsville?
No, actually, Alyssa, she's my partner in life, partner in business. She handles all the scheduling and everything. We just did our fall contest series, and we've got 4 equine sessions somewhere in the area.
Okay, because the National Equestrian Center's in Bernardsville.
Yes. So she's definitely been down there when the Clydesdales were in.
Oh, cool.
Very cool.
Yep. So we do a lot with show photography as well as private sessions as well.
Oh, that's cool.
So probably the only time that I'll shoot JPEG is during any of the events. If I'm shooting sports, unless it's something that I really need that raw photo, that's when I'm shooting JPEG because I'm shooting 10 frames a second.
Yeah. Very cool. Oh, by the way, since we were talking about drones and the new lens and all of that other stuff, and stabilization brought it back to mind because drones, everything's stabilized. One thing that I discovered that I just never played around with the many times I rented and borrowed that G2 before is it has 3 different modes of vibration compensation or stabilization, right?
Yep.
It has standard, which VC1, when it's enabled, as soon as you press your focus button, basically you'll see it in your viewfinder. It basically stabilizes, and you can actually see the stabilization lock in your viewfinder on your camera. VC2 is called panning. Very interesting. I was playing with it last night. It basically stabilizes top to bottom, but not side to side. So you can follow, and it gives you up and down stabilization, but it doesn't fight you while you're panning, which was very cool. And I never realized that was what VC2 was. And then VC3 is even more vibration compensation, but it doesn't do the lock-in. Basically, as soon as you hit the shutter button, it locks right before the shutter goes. So you don't see that stabilization in the viewfinder. But supposedly it provides even more stabilization because it's not sitting there trying to do the stabilization all the time. It only does it right at the instance of taking the shot. So.
Okay, that's interesting. I was wondering what that third stabilization was because I'm familiar with the Nikkor and the Canon lenses having stabilizing 1 and 2, 1 being always full stabilization,
right,
2 being panning.
Which, that's fine, but honestly, I prefer to leave that off because as long as those little motors are running, it's chewing up battery. So, it's one of those things.
Yeah.
I will tell you what, though. I did go outside and I was playing around with it yesterday, and I was hand holding at 200 millimeter at 1/25th of a second. And I would say 3 out of 4 or 4 out of 5 of the shots were sharp. Hand holding at 1/25th of a second at 200 millimeter.
Very nice.
So
The
Very nice.
Sony lenses have 3 settings also. For
Yeah.
off, panning, and then for very erratic. You know, it does the same thing.
let me clarify that, by the way. I didn't mean 1/125th. I meant actually a 25th. So 1/25. Well, no, some people will be like, 1/125th, I handhold mine without vibration control, compensation.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And actually, I dropped it down. I tested it all the way down to like 1/4. And at 1/4, no. But, I mean, I got a couple of sharp shots at 1/8. So, yeah,
Okay.
at 200 millimeter. I mean, if you rack it back to 70 millimeter, then yeah, I mean, you could definitely shoot it down at a quarter or maybe even a half because it's just a shorter focal length, But racked all the way out at 250 or at 200, I got it down to really reliable at 1/25th of a second. So
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
I was actually quite happy with that. Cool. Well, I'm
Still
gonna.
wouldn't rely on a shoot at that speed. But
Oh hell no.
It's good to know that you can.
Yeah, hell, I mean that's one of those like very special situation. You know that you have that capability.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and jump over here and let's bring up some pictures to talk about. And I know that John Darko Chapman, not D'Arcangelo, was maybe gonna join us, and he threw some pictures in here. So
A lot of John's in the group.
I know, what is it? It's like that's a common name or something.
Well, it's saintly. St. John, I mean,
Yeah, that fits us.
There we go. All right.
Hey, Josh, can you take a look at that picture I posted to Jenny yesterday before I have to jump off in a little bit?
Yeah, I'll do that right now, actually.
If you don't mind.
Yeah. That one right there, right?
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Who wants to take the first stab at it?
I like everything about that picture. I like the depth of field, the focus. Is that a reflector, John, or did you do that and post the bottom catch light?
No, that's
That's the bow
eyeliner,
flector.
The bow flector.
Yep.
Is that silver or white?
Silver.
Silver.
This was actually from the workshop that I did at his studio a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was shot
Does
at
that work
2
better in black and with darker eyes?
What was
What's
that?
that?
Does that work better in darker eyes than like blue eyes?
Oh, you mean
You'll-
the catch light?
You'll
Yeah.
notice it more in darker eyes just because of the contrast between the catch light and the darker eye. But honestly, especially if you're using the silver on it, even in really light blue eyes, as long as you've got enough spill light bouncing on it, it's going to be significantly noticeable, even in light blue eyes. It just stands out
I
more
have a
on
hard
a
time
darker
getting
eye.
I have a hard time getting it to show up that much. I'm playing with softbox almost straight down.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you this, that there was a lot of light bouncing on that, and not just from the main light. There was a lot from the main light, and I was using the 90 centimeter parabolic, the rice bowl with the chopstick for this. And I had it shooting not straight on her face, not above her head, but actually just below her chin. So the hot spot of that light source was actually probably falling just below chest level, right? That way I had a lot more light hitting that bow flector to come up from underneath. The other thing is, as you'll notice, you can see the rim light right here and the rim light on the side of the cheek over there. Those were strip lights on each side of her. And those strip lights were also contributing to the light that was bouncing off of that Bowflector. Because they were fired in from behind, so anywhere she wasn't blocking them from the Bowflector, there was some light coming back up, bouncing off of that Bowflector from those lights also. So there was a lot of light hitting that Bowflector.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean,
the only thing about this picture that disappointed me personally is I shot it at 2.8. I wish I would have shot it at 5.6 or 3.5, because when I pulled it up in Photoshop, it locked on her left eye.
Mm-hmm.
And you see how sharp that is? And then it even falls off at the tip of her nose. I had to do selective sharpening on the nose to get it. That's about as sharp as I can get it.
Well,
I like it. I love this picture.
That has a lot to do with you actually composed very tight in frame when taking the shot, which meant that you were very close with that 85 millimeter. So your acceptable plane of focus, your depth of field, was very narrow because she was very close to you at 2.8. If you had stepped back, 2 feet, 3 feet, and, encompassed more in frame and then cropped it in post later, your depth of field would have been deeper, and that wouldn't have been as much of an issue. But I'm in the camp of compose very close in frame to what you intend on doing in post. So yeah, that would be one of those where I would have jumped up to 3.5 or whatever just to give myself a little bit more depth of field,
Yeah, because I from her nose to her eye is a half inch. you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So
and you can see, I mean, this eye is obviously very sharp. This one's already falling out of focus because her head's slightly tilted away,
Right.
And then obviously by the time you get to her cheek and the outside rim of her brow, it's really falling out. So, yeah. But honestly, the tip of the nose being out of focus isn't as noticeable to me until, it was mentioned. And I was like, oh yeah, it is out of focus. Because really all of the sharp edges of the nose, like the nostril and outside of the nostril and that kind of stuff, is acceptably in focus to my eye. So this little, slightly blurred catch or highlight on the end of her nose, I didn't even really notice it until you had pointed it out to me that her nose wasn't in focus. I was like, oh yeah, oh well,
I mean, aesthetically, I think it's extremely pleasing shot.
Oh yeah, because it really brings you into just this. You've got her eye, her lips, all of this right here, and then you've got all this nice skin texture. So I mean, I like it. This is the kind of shots I like to shoot myself. So, I'm a little bit biased to that. You're going to have guys that, they're like, I always shoot f9 for studio portraits, that they may not like this. And I mean, it's subjective. Because they'd be like, oh, well, you got features that are out of focus. Yeah, but I kind of like that look. I want that look. So.
Well, I like, this is why I continue to edit it, because I like the look. It's very elegant, soft. It reminds me of like an old Brigitte Bardot type picture, when they're out of focus a little. And that's why I liked it.
The one thing that I find kind of distracting about the composition is the arm camera right coming out of nowhere and slipping behind her head.
I did too. What could I do with that?
Not much of anything.
Yeah.
I think that shallow depth of field really draws your attention to her eyes so much that I didn't even notice her back line.
Yeah, I mean it's not horrible, but it's definitely there.
I mean, the only thing to get rid of that arm, I could crop it on that side more.
Yeah, or I don't know how much.
I think that'll ruin the composition.
I don't know how much you cropped in. Another option would be to crop landscape instead of portrait and encompass more of the arm out there. Bring it out to where you at least have the crook of the arm, so it shows. Okay, yeah, this is her arm, even if her elbow's going out of frame or whatever.
That's that's the way I shot it, in tight like that. There's no
Mhm.
crop on it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, I still like it. You did a great job on the editing. The skin's nice and smooth. It's not over edited because you can still see all of the texture. You can see her little freckles and everything, you know, so it's
Yeah.
not overly processed. I would personally, if I was doing it, probably go back in and remove some of these little bright single hair highlights that are just kind of floating out here in the dark sea of hair, because they definitely grab my attention, and those are easy fixes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Did you
mean,
dodge your hair, John?
I'm sorry.
Did you dodge your hair at all?
Always black and white. You know, dark and light.
Yeah.
That's one thing that from my art background, that's how you get depth. It separates the hair. Otherwise, it's just a hair, you know. It needs depth and stuff. So yeah, I did.
Yeah, it looks. I like the. I commented when you posted. I really like this picture. It's a beautiful picture.
Thank you.
yeah, I mean, the only other thing, I love the picture, and to go back to dealing with that, I mean, if you cropped it in tighter, you might kind of lose the look that I like about it, actually.
Yeah, you know what I can do? I can change the color on there and try to get rid of the arm then.
Somebody's TV's on. Did somebody else join the... Hey. Oh, hey. Hi there, Jenny B. Come stick your face in the camera. Say hi to everybody. You got Jim and John and Matt. Matt, which Matt is this? I just saw you're on there.
Cook.
Matt Cook. Good morning. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. Yourself, sir?
I can't complain. Cannot complain at all. We got we got Jim Carnes, John Silfies, John DiArcangelo, who's probably about to sign off because Jenny B just arrived at his studio and they're shooting today. So, and this is actually John's picture of Jenny on the screen we were just talking about. And John stepped away, so I'm not going to talk about it anymore. But it looks like, I mean, I was trying to kind of bring the crop in a little bit tighter to deal with the floating arm, but yep. Oh, there we go. Now we've got somebody pretty online.
Steven's here.
Say something about the picture on the screen, Jenny.
I really like it. I like the whole expression and how it. I usually don't like my nose that close up, but I actually like that. It looks very like real me. So I like it.
Well, here is. Let me cancel that. There's the original. All right, John, I know you're about to sign off, and
Yeah.
we were just playing with the crop. I mean, you could bring the crop in a little bit and kind of get rid of the arm. I would actually bring it probably down and cut really close into the hairline, bringing her eyes up, you know, more across like that top third when you do the crop. But
Yeah.
so, hey, Steven, lean over and say hi. That's Steven Bueller, by the way, guys. Buller. Steven Bullshitter. Oh, wait. There might be kids watching this. It's a good thing I checked. This is not designated for kids.
Right. I'll see you guys later.
Hey,
right.
yeah, have a good day, man. Y'all do a great shoot. And I see Elise Leibowitz actually joined us on
Yeah, we
YouTube
gotta
Live,
get
so I'm going
together
to say
sometime.
hi to her real quick.
Yeah.
Hey, Elise.
Sounds good.
All right, John, have fun.
All right.
We'll see your shots later.
Hey, Josh,
Yeah.
I'm taking a look at one of those pictures I posted. I got to get out of here in a few minutes.
All right. Where'd you put them?
They're on the
In the album?
yeah.
Boom. All right. Nice outdoor autumn picture. Shot with the Canon 5D Mark IV, 1/400th of a second at ISO 400, 70 to 200 at f4. How far were you racked out shooting? Were you shooting out there at the long end of your focal length or on the short end of your focal
Yeah,
length?
well, it was at 200. It's 70 to 200, and I was at probably about 160.
Okay. I like this shot. I like the depth of field. Great subject, by the way.
Yeah, she's pretty girl.
Did you have any issues with reflections in the eyeglasses, or was that a pair of glasses you actually took the lenses out of?
No, there's lenses in there. There was no. She was backlit.
Yeah, but even with backlit, sometimes you still get reflections in the glass.
No, I didn't. I didn't get any. There was no reflection. I didn't try to edit any out. That was the way it was in camera.
Nice.
There was a little bit of sun flare on the bottom.
Yes,
left, and when
I see that right down here.
It did a little yellow, and I liked it. So.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a reflector or anything to bump in exposure on her, or did you just have the luck of the draw on really good ambient light, or?
It was a real cloudy day, so it was ambient. All I had was my camera.
Nice. Nice. I mean, go ahead.
I did some color grading on it. I was wondering if that was noticeable, if it was done well, or.
It's done well because it's subtle enough that I really didn't take notice of a color grade on it.
Okay.
And that's my thing. I mean, some people, whenever they color grade, they want it to be, in your face. They want you to notice, hey, this is my style of color grading. I'm more in the camp most of the time of, if I'm doing color grading, I want it to be subtle. It does add to the image, but I don't want it to be in your face where somebody's like, oh, what did they do to that? I want it to still have that natural look where they're like, oh, yeah, no, that was definitely just warm, golden hour sunlight or whatever,
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of create a little bit of cohesion.
Yeah, and that's the other good thing about doing color grading of that style is it does make it cohesive by adding, something that adds a color to the shadows and a color to the highlights. It kind of brings it together where sometimes it isn't always, coming out camera because you have different light sources bouncing in different areas of the image and stuff. So yeah, I definitely like that shot. I mean, it's just a nice classic outdoor portrait, You definitely did a good job on it. I don't really have too much to say about it. Constructive criticism. I mean, even the hair, I'm tossed as to whether or not I would clean up those little flyaways because sometimes I feel like flyaways just make sense when it's an outdoor portrait.
Yeah.
It's not a beauty editorial in a controlled environment in a studio. It's an outdoor portrait. There might be a little bit of a breeze or whatever, and just it adds to that natural. This is us. We're outdoors.
Cool. Well, kind of makes me happy that there's not a whole. What do you think, Jim?
Was this a setup shoot, just like a regular model shoot, or was this a client shoot?
No, this was a model shoot.
Okay.
She's modeling for a while. I had gone up to Albany to shoot this, actually. She lives up in.
Oh, nice.
So we shot inside. Dan Doyle was moving his studio, and so he had an empty space. So I shot for about an hour inside his empty space. And then I wanted to get some outside. It was just really cold that day. It was like 30 degrees out.
Right.
Just went outside, walked around the park by his house for about a half hour, and I just took some pictures.
No, that's great. That's great. I like it. It's well exposed, well composed. The flare on the bottom end, I can, to be honest, take it or leave it. I don't think that it detracts to the image. It adds a little bit of style to it, but it's nothing bad at all. Going with what Josh said, a couple of the flyaways on the top, I typically leave because when you take away certain flyaways, you end up with that just helmet look.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're out in an environment, it just looks really unnatural. We know there's wind going on. We know there's something happening. Her hair is not going to be absolutely perfect. So I think the only flyaway that I would take away is that one
Little
antenna
horn
that's coming off of her head.
That one.
So little things like that I would take away, but the ones on the opposite side of her head or on the top, those are perfectly fine. Those are really good there. One thing about these kinds of jackets that I always think, do I want to take it? Do I want to leave it? So on and so forth, are the neck buttons.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you get one collar flip. I love that collar flip. But then the backing on that button is, to me, it's always like, do I take it? Do I leave it? I really think it can go either way. And then also the subsequent button that it attaches to. But none of those notes are anything about what would make the image better. Those are just personal things that I would take and look at myself. Actually, about the only note that would, I think, move this up is just that one antenna.
Yep. I got one funny thing to say here, by the way. Stace Bernard got really good looking. You know how Facebook recommends people to tag? It's saying, do you want to tag Stace Bernard when I hover over her face? Stace, man, you got really good looking, brother. All right.
The amount of images that he gets tagged in, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, I hear you.
Face.
All right, Juliana. Yeah. I don't know how I feel about this, actually. The Dutch angle off, kilt look, yay and nay. The shallow depth of field here I kind of feel is also odd because you've got her eyes in focus, you've got her forehead and the hair up here in focus. Obviously, it was almost like she was leaned towards the lens. And then by the time you get down to the tip of her nose, her lips, definitely her chin, and then obviously her neck, it's all falling out of focus really quick. So here it's one of those where I feel like the shallow depth of field actually kind of doesn't work just because of what angle you were shooting at her. If you had dropped down to where, her lips and chin were in that acceptable focal plane, I feel like I probably would have liked the shallow depth of field a little bit more. But the way that you can see all of the detail in her forehead and her eyebrows and her eyes, and then by the time you get down to her cheeks and below, it's all going blurry. So,
yeah.
I'm kind of torn on it.
That quick of a drop in depth of field, I shot it at f6, so I was expecting to get a little bit more. I know that I have an app that'll tell me, but honestly, I never even think about looking at that stuff when I'm
You
shooting.
shot this at f6 and you got that shallow of a depth of field?
Yes.
f6 at 120 millimeters. Did you frame this like that in camera? Or did...
Yes.
Oh, okay. So you were right on top of her at 120 millimeters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like you. I pretty much when I was in camera, I may level it off from a little bit off, but for the most part, what I shoot is how it's cropped.
Yeah, if you're not hitting them in the face with the end of your lens, then you're not close enough. Overall, though, it's still a good image. I mean, there's things I don't like about it, and that doesn't mean that it's a bad image, You definitely still have great connection with the lens from her. You know, her eyes are front and center. You know, you're drawn to her eyes, especially since she has those nice blue eyes, and basically everything else in frame is a warm, earthy tone. So that helps make them jump out even more because they're the only thing that is a color hue outside of, that.
Yeah. And that on her neck, that's actually a necklace. That's
Yeah,
how
I know that right there.
Yeah, that's how far that dropped off, how quickly.
hmm I still can't decide if I like. I mean, I feel like standing her straight up and down would actually make me like it less, but I don't know how much I like this kind of Dutch angle across the frame either. So I'm just kind of torn by it. I don't know. But like I said, it's still a good image. Don't think that, what I'm hung up on makes it a bad image. I'm just trying to find things to nitpick at this point, honestly. So
If I was gonna get my pennies in a wad over a critique, I wouldn't put it up here.
I know that as soon as this is over, you're gonna go cry in the corner for an hour. Come on.
I'm gonna go sit in my Jeep for 3 hours and drive the
Josh said bad things about my picture. Jim.
Also
Jump.
surprised by her skin tone. I did no color cropping, no color grading on this, and I used the gray card, and it seemed more warmer tone than her skin actually did when I was looking at her.
Well, that also has to do with exposure because the brighter your exposure, the less saturation it's going to appear to have. The darker your exposure, the more saturated it's going to look. So if you brought up the exposure on this same shot by a stop or whatever, yeah, it would still be warm, but it wouldn't look as saturated. So you would see it a whole different way, probably. The only thing you would have to be concerned with is bumping your highlights down as you brought the exposure up so you don't blow out this highlight on the nose and the lips any more than they already are. Jim. Tag.
Gosh.
Tag.
The two things that stand out to me as soon as this pops in, and it's not anything to do with depth of field, fall off, or so forth. It's just way too yellow, golden bronzed for me. I appreciate that the color is essentially throughout the image, so I can be rested in that this was the styling for the image, but if you're saying that you're using a gray card and this is how yellow the image is, I think it could use some correction there, but I'm also reticent to the fact that if it's all this color's tone, then I'm okay with leaving it there. It's a personal choice. It's subjective with that. The other thing that stands out to me very quickly is her connection to the camera with her eyes. Not for nothing, and I just put it on the table because I don't like to mince words. Her connection to the camera is about as good as she saw the lens. I'm not a fan of her expression here. It's very bland, and it's kind of a hand in hand thing on what she was in the middle of doing at that point in her emoting, but it's also the selection of the image within your reel. So she looks rather bored.
Yeah, actually, this was.
Now that you said that, now I see that.
What's that?
Now that you said she looks rather bored, that's immediately now what I see when I look at it.
I saw that as well. I wanted to get a shot like this, and it was probably one of the last 2 or 3 shots we took. And her mind was definitely elsewhere during the entire shoot. She had a family situation that she was thinking about.
Okay.
So I kind of got that impression too. That
So
like, let's get this over with already.
what I can say to that, and this isn't a reflection on your image or you at all, period. This is kind of like something that I heard from somebody that I was learning from years ago, and I kind of took it to heart when I'm actually doing any prep work, is a lot of people can create great images. It's really easy to nail down your exposure, nail down your color, especially on this level. And you've done that here with the styling of the shoot. I'm not a favor of the yellow tone or the casting, but if that's what you're going for, you nailed it. That's perfectly fine. But it's the emoting here where she does look bored, and as you said, she had other things on her mind that kind of took her or distracted her from what was going on at that point. But us as photographers, when we're selecting our images and getting back to like what was said to me, that okay, it stung a little bit, but it makes total sense. Is that anybody can create a technically really good image, a very technical, hands down, really good image of shit. I'm not calling your image that at all, but it's one of those is we can create great images of not that very interesting of things, but it's up to us to be able to identify that and be able to move to find that really great image that really moves that needle. So that's just kind of speaking to you've got a really great image here, but unfortunately, because of the situation, the circumstances that are pulled through with her expression, it's a really great technical image of somebody looking bored. And if that's not what you were going for, then it would be one of those, at least if that was my image and I did the same thing, which I've done a shit ton of times, I'd go and try to find something else, or that's going to be a goal of mine next time I step into a similar situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. The only thing that I understand all that, and the only thing that I have to say is creating a really good image isn't that easy for me yet. So the reason why I picked this picture is because I thought it was technically a pretty good picture.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the edit was pretty good on it.
Well, then, let's
about
talk
her
about
expression.
that. You've done a lot here that is spot on. So your hard work in being able to do this is really on par.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get technically good at taking images.
Mm-hmm.
I've only been shooting, people for about 2 years, a year and a half, maybe 2 years.
So then, then that's I always incorporate a very large picture or a very large conversation with everything. That's why I partly ramble with everything. But when we're talking about the technical aspects of your image here, I think you achieved a lot of your goals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's really, like I said, I agree with you 100% that the expression is, let's get this over with, I want to get out of here.
Yeah, but on the technical aspect, I agree with Jim. I mean, your lighting is nice. You've got this nice little catch light from your main light. Did you use any kind of bounce or fill?
Yeah, there was a B flat to the side.
Okay. So white B flat to B flat, V flat to open up the shadow on this side. And I mean, you're retouching. One, it's not very hard to retouch Juliana. She usually has really nice skin and everything, so,
Yeah, she did not for this shoot, though.
I mean, in the areas that are in focus, the texture looks good. Obviously, from below the eyes down, there's really no texture to be had because of it falling out of the acceptable plane of focus. But, like, up here at your texture, and I would assume that if this was shot at a wide, a deeper depth of field, you would accomplish the same in other areas of texture. But yeah, your exposure's good. The one thing I just did is I actually brought this into Photoshop and just hit the camera raw filter real quick so I could adjust the color temperature, and I brought up the exposure by, just a little bit. And you see it gets rid of that overall yellow tone Whenever I
Yeah.
I think the yellow tone in her hair is gorgeous.
yeah,
I
actually
really
it
like
is,
that.
and that remains even whenever you change the white balance.
Right. But it almost looks, and because it's being washed out from her face from the key light, you don't really see it too much. But as you get to the neckline,
Mm-hmm.
with that overall yellow tone, it looks like she's been tanned.
Mm-hmm. Spray tanned.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen. I need to hit the road.
All right, brother. Have a good day.
All right. Take care, guys. Thanks for your input.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Keep doing it.
Jim Carnes.
Oh shit.
I know. President Ape. I like that.
Throwback.
Yeah. Throwback to 2014. Nice.
Yep.
What you want to talk about this? You threw it in there for discussion.
I threw it in because hey, it's a throwback. It's using essentially what we would call shit gear at this point. I think it just goes on to like those conversations of where everybody started, what you've done before, and creating what I think are really great images
Mm-hmm.
with really subpar, heavy quotes equipment.
Yeah, heavy quotes, exactly. Because I'm in that camp of, you know what? Even cheap old cameras and lenses, you can still create great images. You don't have to go out and
Oh, yeah.
spend, thousands of dollars on gear to get decent images.
Oh yeah.
You can go on Craigslist and spend $100 on a body and a lens and get a great image. So. Yep. Nice. And this was a Canon 7D with the Canon 70-200 L4, which that's the cheaper 70-200. I got the hiccups. Sorry. Drinking my coffee too fast.
Ironically, it is the cheapest of the 70-200 lens series, but it's also the sharpest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, if you don't need that extra stop and a half of light or depth of field that you can, shallow depth of field you can get with a 2.8, then absolutely that 4 is perfect. So.
Oh yeah. This back when I didn't even know what a 2.8 would help me with.
Yeah.
Do for me. This back when I think this back when I thought shooting a wedding for like $500 was valuable.
Gotcha. By the way, anybody watching this, shooting a wedding for $500 is not profitable. Period. It's not. The only benefit there is you get some experience out of it and maybe some stuff to put in your portfolio, but it is not paying the bills and it is not paying you for your time.
Well, to recap on that, last night I just booked a $7,000 wedding.
Awesome. Good for you.
And I haven't even touched my camera yet.
Yep. Awesome. Good for you. Cool. Yeah, I like this shot, Jim, by the way. I really like the composition of this shot, actually. You've got elements in all of the nice anchor points of the frame.
Mm-hmm.
So the composition of this is really nice, actually. I like it.
Thank you. This was back, and anybody can really learn, and I've learned a ton. And what I've really learned is how much I really don't know, and how much in this shot I really didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
I just knew that I really liked the composition. It wasn't until very later that I learned a little bit more about what composition actually is.
And why subconsciously you liked it?
It was mostly subconsciously because I didn't have the photographic knowledge of why I liked it. But I also went to school for graphic design, and that's where I picked up a camera. So I just incorporated elements of design
right
in my compositions, and it transfers very fluidly. But then I learned what my photographic compositions should be.
Mm-hmm. Matt, were you going to say something? I felt like I heard you start to say something.
Yeah, I was going to ask. You used the term anchor points, and you said he had something in all of his anchor points. Can you go back to that and tell me, I guess closer to layman terms, what you meant with that?
All right. Are you familiar with the rule of thirds?
Absolutely.
Okay. Where the rule of thirds, where the bars cross, those are what I was referring to as anchor points. So basically, if you draw your rule of thirds on here, you'd have an anchor point right here. You'd have an anchor point right here in his head. You'll have an anchor point right down here where his patches are. You know, it just, he's got elements on basically most of the anchor points that just kind of draw you around through the image.
Yeah, I got it now. I just hadn't heard the term anchor points, but I very well understand rule of thirds.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What I like about this image is triangles is always a something to try to achieve, and I think that foremost goes with a lot of like the subconscious things that I didn't realize about this image is how many triangles we can find within this image.
Oh, lots.
So you have
so many.
Not only the square and compass there, but the neckline from the vest
and the two pieces of the vest.
The T-shirt being framed out with the bar, and then underneath
the
at the
forearm,
you've got another triangle with the bar.
Mm-hmm.
Those anchor points that you pointed out, going from whether it's the mirror or the hand to the head and neckline, you've got your other triangle right there. Just a lot of really good, pleasing angles with this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Cool. And I like your desaturated style that you did to it. You didn't take it black and white, but it's definitely not really saturated. It's kind of got a color tone and a desaturation to it, which makes some of the elements like the American flag and the pinup girl or whatever on his vest kind of take a little bit of a more weight in the image because of their saturation and color in comparison to everything else in the image. Yep. Great shot. I like it.
This is Sleeper.
Road Captain.
So, yeah, no, this was 2014. I was actually living in Marcy, New York, which is a little town to the northwest of Utica. I had a lot of friends and brothers in Freemasons and Widow's Sons. And I think in another one of the local photography groups, they did a theme of motorcycles.
Mm-hmm.
And just out of nowhere, I remembered, hey, back in 2014, you did a 3-day event out in Rochester with about 300 bikers. So I went digging for these old images.
Yeah.
And this is Sleeper from that day.
Nice. Oh, I clicked off of it. Where'd it go? There we go. Yeah, I mean, not as, I'm not going to say not as great, but not as strong as the previous one to me. Still strong, and there's a lot of other things in this one that make it strong. A lot of it has to do with the leading lines, especially with like his brake and throttle cables and everything bringing you up to his face, and the way his face is kind of framed in this negative space on its own.
Yeah.
And I like the headlight and everything in the foreground, slightly out of focus. I like that. And the tank. So it all brings context. You've got just enough of the bike in frame to bring the context, but he's still the subject.
Right.
So
I really enjoyed how this framed him, as you're saying.
Nice.
Well, Josh, I've got one. I'll let y'all chew up. I know you can chew it up and spit it out. If you want me to instant message it, I know some things that are wrong, but I didn't know how to fix them.
Okay.
But if y'all want to chew one of mine up, I'll PM it to you.
All right. Yeah. Throw it at us.
Give me this second.
So did you, Jim, by the way, did you throw some kind of HDR or something at this one?
Not necessarily HDR. I knew everybody at the time, because it was 2014, was playing with HDR itself.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I was really keen on high contrast,
Yeah.
as well as bumping the detail slider
Yeah.
up a little bit to bring that detail pop in.
I like that shot. The one thing that I might have done differently is I might have tried to get down even lower and just make it more of a, shooting up. It would have brought, like the tree line through, maybe right through here. So not just the handlebars, but the tank and everything would be up above, and it would also give just more of that towering, overpowering feel to the bike to you as the viewer.
Yep. I think I did this while they were doing the hot dog contest. Have you seen that?
The hot dog contest? Like a hot dog eating
At a
contest?
bike show?
On what?
At a bike event?
Nah.
So they put up an A-frame,
Uh-huh.
throw a bar across, and they dangle like 6-foot string attached to hot dogs with mustard and ketchup on it.
Okay.
The contest is you got to get a biker with somebody riding bitch, and whoever's riding bitch, they go through as slow as possible, and they've got to bite off that hot dog.
Okay.
So to my left, you've got like 2 or 3 bikers with their old ladies
Uh-huh.
trying to bite this hot dog on a string that's just smacking them in the face with ketchup.
Sounds like something I have to go see.
Actually, I just found all these photos too because they were in my like deep archive.
Yeah.
I think I have photos from the hot dog contest.
All right, so this is the shot that Matt Cook just sent me. Okay, before we even start on it, Matt, is there anything specifically that you yourself see as wrong or needs improvement that you want our opinion on?
The forehead, for one thing. She's very country, wears a cap a lot.
Yeah.
The tan line on her forehead is natural. But as I tried to edit it, I could not fix it and it not be just obviously over edited. I don't like that at all, but I couldn't figure out a way to do anything about it and it not just be obvious.
I honestly didn't notice it until you pointed it out. But
I guess
now that it's there, and now I understand. You're asking about it. One, what are you editing with? What software?
Lightroom and Photoshop.
Okay. That way we know what tools you have available to you. What else about the image bothers you?
I guess the different contrast between her chest area and her face, but I came into the same thing, not really being able to fix that either.
Mm-hmm.
But,
I looking at the image overall, honestly, it looks like the exposure, the brightest exposure is this area right here, and I think that the quick, dirty, easy way to fix it would be just bringing a gradient up from the bottom and dropping the exposure just to bring that down, or bringing a gradient down from the top and bringing that exposure up just to balance. So that basically right here about the shoulder is where the transition fades out. So you'll get her face, I would actually probably bring down the lower half because this is really bright right in here. And I like the exposure you have on her face, And I feel like Yeah, it looks slightly dark, but I think that the reason it looks dark is an optical play because this is so bright, and if you got this brightness down, this wouldn't look as dark. Um, I find I would probably have brought the crop in even tighter on this. And also in shooting it, I would have been more aware of background distractions. Like this right back here looks like a paper towel roll to me. I don't know what it is, but that's exactly what I think of. Is hey, there's a paper towel roll right there behind her shoulder. And it's,
well, we were in the diner.
Yeah. And it's just floating around in all of this negative space back there behind her, so it makes it even more obvious. But yeah, I mean overall, I feel like you kind of over edited her eyes. She almost has that glowy look, like the eye whites are too clean and too bright, so it makes them look like they're kind of lit up and glowing. So I would probably back down on the eye editing. Oops, wrong one. I'm gonna download this so I can open it up. I mean, I can sit here and start nitpicking stuff, but I mean, we kind of hit the main points on it. Cropping wise, I can't really bring the crop up because then you get that whole random hand coming from nowhere underneath. Like, whose hand is that really? I don't know. Just playing with it there. I see Jim came back. As for that tan line, yeah, I mean, honestly, even though you've pointed it out and I'm aware of it now, it's still not that noticeable to me. You know, I feel like this right here, the upper chest and shoulder being so bright, yeah, that one is more of an issue to me. Like you said, Matt.
Okay, I'm here.
And I can actually... I don't know why Photoshop disappeared from my context menu, but it's annoying, so we got to open it up this way. There we go. All right, so I mean, for fixing that, like I was saying, maybe a gradient of exposure. Just bringing that down just to balance it out a little bit. And that's just a quick dirty that can, you see how significant just bringing that down a little bit really affects it.
Yeah.
And honestly, another way you could go about that is I would do that definitely, and then maybe I would go for a vignette around her just to emphasize her face as the subject. So something like that. Oops, wrong one. So yeah, just that gradient and adding a vignette to it. You see that? Or vignette, or however you want to say it.
Yeah.
You see the difference as I toggle that on and off?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that was just a quick fix, you know. And you see now, you don't notice this nearly as much as now her face looks nice and, you know, center of attention. I mean, you could work this out back here if you wanted. You could probably clone it out or even spot heal
Yeah, I
it
don't
out.
think this is that same shoot. I cloned out a light receptacle on one, but I didn't think much about the.
Whoopsie. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't do that to make it look good. I just did it to see if it really, you know, helped by not having it there. Yeah, I feel like if you cloned out the paper towel roll and that little black thing over there to the side, whatever it was, that really helps a lot too. Yeah, I mean, but still, I like the shot. I like your composition in general. Getting rid of these distractions back here, and doing just a little bit of adjustment to exposure and adding a vignette just to kind of bring the focus more to her face, and you're good, man. I see Jim sitting there thinking about something. Huh? What? Exactly. He was watching YouTube videos on his other screen.
No, the adjustments that you made are definitely good. They would definitely help out. The two things that really stood out to me, just because the adjustments that you were speaking about were kind of general. Yeah, those need to happen, need to be attended to. Right. I'm not sure how really good to say it.
Brutal works. I got no problem with brutal.
Right. But there's a point of being brutal and just to be malicious, but I'm not going down that path because I want to help create this or make this image better for the next time you step out and you see a similar situation going on. The rouging that she used on her cheek, it looks like a bruise, like somebody popped her. And then right at her temple, it's looking flat. I'm not sure if that was in camera or if you did some editing to try to fix the skin tone in that area, because I see that tone actually fading into the hairline. That would be something to pay attention to as well. Not so much the crispness of the hairline when it meets the scalp, but that the hair retains its color as it meets the scalp, as well as the skin tone there not being desaturated as it kind of looks.
Yeah. Now on the rouge, that's actually an edited. That was something I was waiting to see if y'all caught on to. Josh, if you can zoom in right there, I can show you what I was after in that spot. About the go up, scroll up. All right, about the middle of her ear,
Mm-hmm.
then move camera right, was a monster blackhead.
Okay.
And that's what I tried to fix there.
Mm-hmm.
It caught my attention walking in the door, and it drove me nuts, and everything shot from that side of her face.
Mm-hmm.
But,
But here's also another thing to think of or just realize when it happens, because it's going to happen every time that you crop in as well. Is when you crop into something, it's going to reveal a whole lot as well. So that being said, the underside of her nose, where the cleft to the top of her lip is,
Yeah.
did she have any contour there, or not makeup contour, but did she have any cleft there? Because it seems like the cleft that would be there, the dip at the top of her lips, seems kind of removed, as well as the lipstick there is looking a little too.
Here's
crisp
my
for the
thing.
line.
I'm gonna ask you a question. Did you use Portrait Pro on this?
not on this version. I played with it. Somebody had told me about it, and I played with it later on.
The reason I ask is I see a lot of things that are very typically giveaways to Portrait Pro, and they're actually the things that Jim is pointing out right now, like the color in the hair right here bleeding over from the skin and the weirdness here. And when I zoom in, that skin texture that's there is a very Portrait Pro skin texture. That's why I was asking.
Well, in the original, I had worked on right in the middle of her chin.
Uh-huh.
Right square below her nose was a shadow. What it is, she is facing a window, and the sun was kind of high, so it threw a shadow right in the middle of her mouth at the bottom of her lipstick.
Okay.
Now, I played with the lipstick there because it was kind of out of shape. I can still see it in this image now, in camera right corner of her mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And let me get back to the right screen. But I had played with all of that. Because and right under her nose was a shadow. I'm looking back into the originals.
Yeah.
And there was a shadow under her nose and a very dominant shadow right in the middle of her mouth, right underneath her lipstick.
Yeah.
And,
See, just like the cleft that you would expect here, I also expect to see a bit of a cleft under the lip going into the top of the chin that is just completely flat here. Like there is no shape. It's almost like her lip just goes straight down to the end of her chin. I would expect to see a contour under here that I'm not seeing, which looks very unnatural to me.
I see what you're saying now. Yeah. It's almost like her bottom lip is the same plane as her chin.
Yeah, exactly, and it just goes flat. It doesn't curve in and then back out to her chin. It just straight down, and it barrels because you can see like here's the highlight, and then it falls off to each side. So it's just like, yeah, it just looks very unnatural. You know, the lack of any kind of contour or anything here.
Okay.
So what a lot of this is going to really help with, and why pointing it out is really going to help, is because a lot of this is indicative of learning light more than placing a light and pointing it somewhere. Because it's not about the light that you're using, the actual light that is there, but now you're looking tighter at what light and contrast as it shapes a face will do, because everything, and that's why a lot of people work with frequency separation so much and dodging and burning, is because light will shape the face infinitely.
Mm-hmm.
So
By the way,
those clefts that we're talking about, that depth in her jaw, in her chin, the cleft under her nose, all of that is indicative of the light that used to be there that was essentially edited out because we were eliminating one object. But we're learning that eliminating that one object can create other flaws that we're discussing right now.
Yep. By the way, Matt,
Yeah.
would you mind actually sharing your unedited or straight out of camera shot of this?
Okay, that's what I was actually going back to look at while y'all were talking. I was looking. Let me see if I can find it. I haven't found it yet. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, that's not it. It's one of my problems. I saved so many versions. I do this, I go back and I do that.
It's all right.
Now finding the straight out of camera version is hard. Well, maybe not. There it is.
All right. Did you find it?
I found it. I'm trying to get it exported.
All right. Cool. Cool. And I know Stefan uploaded some pictures here. Stefan, we're going to be wrapping this up, so I'll hit this on the Bourbon Hour this coming Wednesday, and I'll also hit John's pictures on the Bourbon Hour. So you guys, you know, you get a hall pass until Wednesday. And we'll wrap it up after we finish looking at and talking about your shot here, Matt. All right, brother?
All right. Where did I put it?
I'm gonna have to actually run myself. We need to start prepping for our sessions today.
Oh, whatever. You know clients don't care if you're late.
No, but I care if their check's clear.
Yeah, that's true. I don't like those rubber checks. Those are terrible.
Yeah. All right, guys. Y'all have a great weekend.
All right, you too, brother.
See you around.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Just my internet is being really slow. It's trying to upload to you. You can move on with somebody else if you need to. I mean,
No, it's all good. That was pretty much it. I just got it. There we go. I just want to be able to pull it over side by side here for a little comparison. So, as you can see where he was talking about, see, this is your straight out of camera on the right and your edit on the left. Well, actually, let me put your original there. There we go. All right, so this was your unedited versus your edited, and you can see how these little subtle shadows and whatnot right here actually create, and you got rid of the little cleft right there. Oops, back. Right there, there's a shadow just under the bottom edge of her lip. That's what gives that contour, that shape. You see it?
Yeah.
And you,
but to me, the shadow just jumped out, so I guess lightening the shadow may have been a direction to go.
right, instead of removing it.
Mm-hmm. Do I not?
Yeah, you don't want to remove it. You can definitely tone it down, but you don't want to remove it.
Okay.
Yeah, and overall, I mean, now that I'm able to actually see what came out of camera versus the edit, I see that you didn't go too heavy and, I mean, completely restructure the way she looks or anything, so that's great. But yeah, I mean, just the little things that we were pointing out, some of the, removing shadows and stuff like that, then you start to get this very interesting, weird look,
All right.
Cool. All right, well, I am going to go ahead and wrap this up and get off of here. So, Matt, thank you very much for joining us. And thank you anybody that joined us on YouTube. I see Elise was on there and I didn't have time to reach over and type a response to her, so sorry about that, Elise. And other than that, that was Coffee and Cameras episode 10. Come back and join us any Saturday morning, 9 p.m. Central U.S. time, or join us for the Bourbon Hour, 9 p.m. Wednesdays Central U.S. time. And that being said, y'all have a good afternoon.